Lee Myers, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. This is a pleasure to be here. I was surprised when they actually accepted this opportunity. What to do when Nagios notification don't meet your needs? You push it. Give you a little bit of background for me. I started out of high school working for Intel, and the computer that they were working on at that time was ASCII Red, or also as it was known by us, was teraflops, because it was the first teraflop supercomputer. It was a great opportunity. It was a hallmark in the design of supercomputers of using off-the-shelf components. Well, my career went a lot of different ways because Intel stopped doing supercomputers, and so I had different jobs. Well, my latest job happens to put me again with supercomputers. Currently, I work for the National Center of Atmospheric Research, or NCAR, and our computer is called Yellowstone. It's a 1.5 petaflop computer, and when it came in, it ranked in the top 500 as number 12. Well, as things happen, it's currently 50th. We're going to get a new one within the next couple of years, but it's not going to go that high. The thing that was interesting for me looking over this was that the computer that I had back in '95 that I worked on was about the same square footage as the one I currently work on. The number of processors was the same. Mainly the number of cores and memory is what's different, and the network. Of course, also the processor speed was something that had a big impact on this because it was running Pentium Pros, which we joked about. A professional Pentium. So that was our background. It's just fun starting out my career and ending career in the same type of field. Our Nagios instance that we have, our main one, covers about 1,200 hosts and over 3,000 services. We actually run multiple instances of Nagios on the same server. And so some of them are very small, and some are bigger. And these numbers actually have changed since I did this slide a month ago. I'm constantly getting more people wanting us to monitor. But we also, when we started out running Nagios on a virtual machine with 1 core and 2 gigs of RAM. My word of advice, don't do it. It was horrendous. Loads would always go up high, especially when they were backing up the virtual machines. So I had to do some testing to figure out what we actually needed. And so I developed a virtual test supercomputer, which had 9,000 nodes. Actually, I created 4 of them and used that to test it. So that's why you see that test instance there of 20,000 nodes and over 40,000 instances. And to tell you what that did to the virtual machine, within 15 minutes, it was running a load of 15, and so I shut it off. Half an hour later, the load was still going up. So we use, on our primary instance, CheckMK, which is a plugin for adding and monitoring additional features on a server without having to send multiple responses to it. We also, from 5 other groups, receive passive results from their Nagios servers. And then we monitor systems on 4 different sites. Our new system, we have run with 32 cores, 64 gigs of memory. I'm a big one for making sure I had plenty of overhead. I mean, we only run less than a load of 1. And when we're running with the test system, the additional 20,000 hosts in that, we're running less than a load of 4. How we are able to run multiple instances is by using what's called OMD, Open Monitoring Distro, which combines Nagios, CheckMK, Thruck, PnP for Nagios, et cetera, all in an easy install. Oh, one thing I can see, I apologize for the slides. I mainly did the slides for documentation for those that aren't here. And so if you can't read them, wait until they're published and you can read them a lot easier because there's a lot of text and I'm not going to read them. So we're talking about notifications. In Nagios, you have certain settings that you can set for notifications. For your host and service, you define your notification period, whether it's 24/7 or during the work hours, and you have your contact groups. In your contacts, you get to specify your notification periods and what notifications you want to be informed of. Well, for my group, it's designed for a standard work week where you work 9 to 5, 5 days a week. Well, our shop is a 24-hour. We always have everyone there. So our schedule does not look like this. It looks like this. It's a rotating schedule of different weeks. You work days, you work nights. There is no consistency that you could easily plug into Nagios for notifying us. Well, the purpose that we need for notification is not to say, okay, here's an error, because someone's always there on site. The problem is that we're not always in the room. We might be at a meeting, we might be out actually on the computer floor, changing out a DIMM or changing out a network card or something. And so a regular notification didn't work for us. So because we weren't always in the room, we wanted something that would alert us. So we didn't have to constantly carry something around to tell us. Our initial thing that we tried was using an iPad that in a browser would have Nagios running so that we could see the errors. Well, the problem with that is, yes, we could see the errors on Nagios, but Nagios running on the iPad, the web browser, would not produce any audible alerts for us. We tried different browsers, none of them worked. And so it didn't do what we wanted. We wanted to be able to be notified without having to constantly looking. So we defined what we needed to do. We wanted to be able to interface with the Nagios data. We needed some way to parse that data so we can look for the unacknowledged alerts, something to send us our notifications, and then a program or an app on our mobile devices that would alert us. So this is what we did. With OMD, one of the things that's built into it is CheckMK Livestatus. It's an interface into the Nagios data. And it's a broker module. It's written by Matthias Kettner, who's in Germany. And it allows you, through Unix sockets, to directly query the Nagios states. And so there's no database that we need to maintain, and to activate it in the Nagios config is a single line. It makes it really nice. Now, on the, right, you're right, my left, is an example of me running the command to get the list of hosts, and I'm piping that into Unix cat to the live interface, Unix socket. And then it outputs the information on the different hosts. That's really not readable as is, so you need to be able to parse it a little more. Well, with check MK Live, it has LQL language, which allows you to query what's happening. And so you start out with the keyword get, and then you want to put what name of the table you want, whether it's a service table or a host table, contacts, whatever. All the different tables I have listed up there. And so you can query them for whatever you need to do. Then you can have, you give a list of header lines that you want for the columns. And then you end your line and you config. So your columns tell it how to organize the data coming out. So if you want it so that the system name, its state, and then a description fall in that order, you can do that, or vice versa, any of the directions. It also allows you to run filters. So you can say, I want a column name that equals and then a piece of text, or it doesn't equal a piece of text, or it has a value over a certain value. You can filter it that way. And you can also combine filters with and or. It's actually quite powerful. And as I was preparing this, I was reading the docs a lot more, because when I wrote my tool, I was just trying to focus on one thing and get it done quickly. But I was looking at some more complex things that it has, of being able to count how many items it comes up, or sum up values, get the min, max, standard deviation. It's just amazing what it has. And so I'm going to be, as a project, looking at what other ways we can do it. Now, the next thing that we need to do was be able to send out those notifications. And one of the tools that I came across was Pushbullet. It's an app that allows you to push out messages, pictures, and all that to your phone, to your browser. And it's free, which is great for us. And for it, we just needed to use the HTTP API, because of all that we were doing was just sending out messages over it. We weren't creating an app that used Pushbullet. So Pushbullet has clients for Android, iOS. There's also plugins for Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Opera, Windows, and Mac. Nothing for Linux yet. But the nice thing about this is with Pushbullet running on my phone, not only do I get the alerts from Nagios when I'm running my tool, but I also get my text and all that, alerts that appear on my phone popping up on my browser, because I have it running at both places. So it helps a lot. So how we solved this problem was using this script right here. And the heart of this is this center piece of code right here. You're not going to be able to read it. This is more of documentation, so when you download the slides, you can look at the code. But basically, what this is doing is sending to Pushbullet each of the line of the output from MK Livestatus. The key right here is this file right here, Pushbullet query hosts. That is where I've specified what the query is for it. I have on here two of them. This one here is for the hosts, and this is for service alerts. The top line is to read the person's access code for Pushbullet, so Pushbullet knows who to send it to. Here is an example of my query hosts, Pushbullet query hosts. First, called get, which is the command you have to execute, and then the column name, which is host. That's all I'm interested. The columns that it's going to output are the name of the device, the plugin output state, where it's critical or 0, 1, 2, 4. And no, plug-in output, which is the description of what the alert is, and then the state, which is critical of that. Then I filter it for states greater than 0, so that means anything that's not okay. Acknowledged equals 0, so that means they hasn't been acknowledged by anyone of the staff. And also host schedule downtime depth equals 0. Basically, I don't want anything that's in downtime. So if something goes critical, but it's in downtime, I ignore it. Doing it for services, here's a comparison of the two different query hosts. And the services, the only thing that's different is instead of the last filter being host scheduled downtime depth, it is scheduled downtime depth. So in order to run this, we have some support scripts that make it easy. Because what we need to be able to do is have it check periodically. So we create a cron job, which we use cron tab, some sed scripting to write into the cron tab, a command to run every 4 minutes the Nagios push script that we had just seen. And for the longest time, that was what it was. And we'd, when you'd come in from work, we'd run in-push on, which was a script, and it would put into our cron tab to run this check every 4 minutes. As we got new people in and they weren't as familiar with our whole process, we found things that I wasn't checking for. The first thing that I had to add was right up here, which checked the UID to make sure that it wasn't being run as root. We found out how bad that was if they ran it as root when a bug in the code caused it to wipe out all the root's cron jobs. Luckily, I had that all backed up and was able to restore it when I came in. Now, the latest thing that we added to our scripts was this lower portion right here, which used some little bit of scripting to check what time it was, and to use the at command to create a call at the end of their shift to run our next script, which actually turns the in-push off. That way, we didn't have to remember when we were getting ready to leave to turn off the script. There was many a times that I forgot to run that script, and it's no fun at 2 o'clock in the morning to have an alert pop on your phone waking you up when you didn't have to worry about it. This is the simple script I have for turning it off, and all it does is it reads out the cron tab, runs sed to comment out the one line that was calling the in-push every 4 minutes, and save that. Now, some future upgrades that we want to do to this are we would love for it to automatically read our schedule off of the Google Calendar and know when to turn it on and turn it off for us. None of us have found the time to dig into that yet. Another thing that we would like to do is because some of the alerts that we have to monitor aren't just from Nagios. We have, for one of the facilities, they have a program called Environet that if their people that are, the facility peoples don't acknowledge some of their alerts within 5 minutes, then it sends an email to us. And so right now we have no way of getting alerted if there was an email that popped up for us. Unfortunately, it has a lot of bugs and gives us false alerts saying, oh, this is okay. It's like, I don't care if it's okay. I just want to know when it's bad. Another thing I think we're going to do is, instead of just commenting out the cron tab, we're just going to remove it. I'm still a little nervous about doing that. And then anything else we can think of. We recently found another bug in our inpush script our inpush on script that we didn't anticipate. Because we checked to see if you're root. And so one day, I was working in Nagios doing some configurations, and so I'd logged in as root, making it easier for me. And I remembered, I want to turn this on. I need to get back to myself. So instead of exiting out of root, I, as root, SU'd as myself, thinking, okay, now I'm myself, I'll execute it. Well, the problem is the at program didn't recognize me as myself, but recognized me as root. So that night, it didn't turn off the alerts. And so that night, I got more alerts. So it wasn't that much fun. So any questions you guys might have? Yeah, here he comes.
Questions? Right there. Okay, so I see a lot of scripting, which is great. I love it when people solve problems through scripting. There's a program which may or may not be of interest to you called TTYTTER. And I don't know how people pronounce it, but it's Twitter with the first couple letters changed to TTY. And it's a command line interface to Twitter's API. So you can echo a string of text and have that show up in a Twitter stream. I don't know if that's something of interest to you, but you mentioned iPhones, Android, iOS, or et cetera, et cetera. They all have Twitter clients. We use that for all of our notifications, not all, but most of our notifications with Twitter accounts that are private, that the people who need to see things subscribe to when they need to see them, and then they can unfollow them or at least turn off the notifications when they don't. I don't know if that's something that may be of interest to you, but you might want to take a look at that.
Yeah. It could be another option that we have.
Just a follow-up commentary on what he was saying. I tried Twitter, and the problem in my case is the limited characters in a tweet, right? Because sometimes I tend to send a lot of information. And also a follow-up commentary is that I've been using Telegram. It has an open API to send even to groups or to contacts. So for me, with Telegram, it's really easy to send notifications too. And push bullets seems really interesting. I've never seen it, so I'm going to give it a try as well.
Okay.
You mentioned something called OMD,
Uh-huh.
and it comes with Nagios 3.5.
Yeah.
Is it possible, once you deploy that or install that you can upgrade that version of Nagios?
Right now, I don't think you can upgrade it to Nagios 4. The main reason right now it's still running at 3.5 from what I've read on the forums is one of the tools that they have included in it, which is PNP for Nagios. The version that they use doesn't support 4, at least last I checked. But everything else is, I know they've been saying that it's getting updated so it works with the other one. So I think that's just the last holdout.
Thank you.
So what other kinds of notification things did you look at other than the one you used, and why? What was it about them that didn't meet your needs?
I think at the time when we were looking at things, one of my coworkers found another thing that was like Pushbullet, but it's their service wasn't free. And then Pushbullet just happened to be the second one I looked at because I'd heard about the app and thought, well, let's look at it. It provided what we needed. And so we just stopped there looking for things.
Any other questions? Right here.
I'm slightly confused on what the whole push on, push off stuff was all about. Was that just to get something into cron that activates the alerting and then take it back out?
Yeah. Push on, just put into the cron the command to every 4 minutes run our push script. And then push off, just pull it out, or actually commented it out.
Okay, so see, it's got to organize my own thoughts here for a second. So the push on puts something in cron, which does the pulling from Livestatus to push bullet.
Yeah.
And then the push off removes that from cron. Is that right?
Yeah. Right here. Whoops. Yeah. Here's the push off, and what it's doing is using sed to pull out of the cron tab. Actually, it just comments out the line where it runs the Nagios push.sh. The push on is what uncommented or added to the cron tab, the command.
Okay.
The heart of it is this right here, where it goes out and queries MK Livestatus for hosts and for service alerts that are happening at that time.
Yeah, I'm intrigued because I think in terms of, I like the way you're getting your data and how you're figuring out what to do with it. And then for me, I like to tie things back into Nagios wherever I can. And so you've got access, you're running on the Nagios machine, obviously. You've got access to the Nagios command file that you can execute commands through, including notifications, in which case you could rely on Nagios' own time periods and things like that. But it sounds like you're saying that that wasn't enough for you, is that right?
I never thought about using the Nagios commands to send out alerts and that. Never thought of using...
I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah, but we just never thought of that as like, okay, what can we get that will alert us? And it's like the normal Nagios notifications didn't quite meet what we needed. And so we thought, okay, we'll use something outside that we can read in the data.
Okay.
And so that's how this came about.
I'll talk to you afterwards.
Now, one thing that became a pain with doing this is one time they were updating our routers, and something went wrong and basically brought down the whole network. Well, in that meantime, this script, Nagios is still checking. It can't reach anything, so everything's in alert state. As soon as the network got restored, this thing was running. Everything's not acknowledged. So we got 3,000 services that are gone, 2,000 hosts. Let's say it took me hours to clean out the push bullet. It was not fun. In fact, it was just a couple of weeks ago I finally finished clearing out all those alerts.
We have any more questions? All righty then. How about a nice round of applause for Lee Myers?